For our week 3 roundup, for those taking Thesis seminar, I'd like to talk about a few things that we're working on this week and some things that we need to be thinking about for next week. Remember that our deadline for finishing our literature review is February 28th. Today's February 16th. So we need to be well into writing our thesis, coming up with a good logical argument, thinking about how we want to organize our ideas. And today I'd like to talk just briefly about how you can go about doing that. The first thing I would do would be to do a search for thesis statements. We want to be very careful in how we organize the main ideas of our thesis statement to assure that they align with our thesis statement. So I did a search, and here are some helpful links that you might want to refer to as you begin thinking about organizing your work. Also, I'd like to draw your attention to modules for week 2, where you'll find a link called Developing an Argument. So make sure that you look at this as well, because I have provided some examples about how you can organize your work into claims. But thinking about organizing your work, I'd like to provide an example. So I'm going to refer to this article, and if we look at the abstract, you'll see that the focus here is on activities and language lessons that were driven by conversation analysis. Okay, they refer to it here as conversation or dialogic-driven pedagogy. So as an example here, let's say that you come across this article and you are interested in this topic, looking at the discourse within the language learning classroom. And you see here in this particular article, they've divided it up into 2 areas or 2 sections. So let's see in this article what some research questions might be. Now in this example, there are no explicit research questions being presented here, but I think we can get some ideas as they are posing a few questions that we might consider and then might alter or modify to bring into our own context. So if we look at this paragraph here, we'll see that they ask, if dogma ELT is driven by conversation, yet natural conversation is not usually possible in the classroom, what kind of talk could best support its claims? You see in the second question here, it really presents 2 different types of discourse. One that promotes learners talk to learn, and another where learners learn to talk. So I found the second article here that looks at classroom discourse. And in this article, they talk about IRE, or Initiation, Response, and Evaluation, or IRF, Initiation, Response, and Follow-up, being one type of quote-unquote traditional discourse. And you might then consider another category that looks at alternative forms of discourse. So let's say that you build a thesis statement supporting the claim that learners talk to learn as being a form of alternative discourse or an alternative to IRF, and the learn to talk framework comes from the typical IRF framework. So you can divide up your literature into 2 sections, one that discusses the more traditional IRF approach, and a second section that talks about alternative approaches or alternative discourses. And within that second section, you could have subsections that detail what you mean by alternative forms of discourse. The idea here is that you build research questions at the end of your literature review. Maybe we present a research question here where we ask, how do teachers promote a discourse where learners talk to learn? Maybe a second research question is, how do teachers create a discourse that allow language learners to learn to talk? So you could kind of compare these 2 types of discourse, or at least analyze and see in which ways discourse addresses each one of these forms of talking and learning. So remember that the thesis statement is the one sentence that is the main idea of your literature review or your entire thesis, and that it addresses or answers your research questions. And remember that the literature reviews should be an argument or organized, coherent set of claims that answer your research questions. Later then, when you conduct your own analysis, your own research, you'll also be trying to answer your own research questions and then comparing your results with those from the experts or from the literature that you included in your literature review. So these are some things to think about as you begin developing and finalizing your literature review. Make sure that you are forming an argument, creating a set of claims that support an overall thesis statement, and that the thesis statement and your overall literature review address or answer your research questions. So we're looking at aligning your literature review, making sure that it is coherent, that it's cohesive, and shows unity. These are things that we'll be talking about this week. Feel free to email me if at any point you want me to look at your writing in Google Drive. I'll be more than happy to look at that. We'll also be talking about your literature review in our tutoring sessions this week. But try to work as much as possible in Google Drive, uploading or updating your information as much as possible. And we'll be focusing primarily on organizing our ideas, making sure our writing is coherent. So have a good week, and I look forward to seeing your progress.